Did you know one of the villains in Spider-Man Homecoming was set up in Captain America Civil War, and that Marvel had proved several times that Iron Man was right in Civil War? In today's video, we'll discuss how Spider-Man's villains connected to Captain America, and all the ways Iron Man was right in Civil War. Without further ado, let's get started. First off, let's talk about how Captain America Civil War set up one Spider-Man Homecoming villain. Spider-Man was introduced in the Marvel Cinematic Universe in Captain America Civil War, while the movie also secretly set up a Spider-Man villain. After a very long wait, Sony and Marvel signed a deal that allowed Spider-Man to be part of the MCU while leading Sony's Spider-Man universe at the same time. Tom Holland made his debut as Peter Parker in Captain America Civil War, before landing his first solo movie in Spider-Man Homecoming. In Civil War, we saw Spider-Man fight with Iron Man on his side, so he didn't really face an enemy of his own until Homecoming. In Homecoming, we saw Spider-Man come face to face with Adrian Toomes, aka Vulture, an arms trafficker whose company was forced out of business. Toomes built his super gear, the Vulture suit, and wings from Chitauri technology from the Battle of New York. He went after Peter Parker when he got in the way of his very shady business, with weapons built from the same technology. Other members of Toomes' team were also fully equipped with modified weapons, such as Jackson Bryce, who went by the name of the Shocker. This character was subtly brought up in Captain America Civil War. Let's talk about how and when. Following up, let's talk about how Civil War's Shocker setup is the best approach for Marvel. Captain America Civil War starts with Steve Rogers, Natasha Romanoff, Sam Wilson, and Wanda Maximoff going after Crossbones to stop him from stealing a biological weapon. We saw Crossbones wearing gauntlets on both of his hands, which he used to fight Captain America. In the book, With Great Power, How Spider-Man Conquered Hollywood During the Golden Age of Comic Book Blockbusters, Sean O'Connell shared that Kevin Feige pointed out a detail that set up Spider-Man Homecoming's Shocker. That detail is the gauntlets, with Feige leaning over to people during screenings and saying, "Shocker's going to get that." Bryce ended up using a modified version of the gauntlets because they were discovered by Toomes' Department of Damage Control. Bryce was killed by Toomes for putting the team at risk by using the gauntlets recklessly in public. The gauntlets were passed down to Herman Schultz, who became the new Shocker. The MCU is setting up characters all the time, but the way it did it with Shocker was absolutely loved by Marvel fans. It was very subtle and didn't take away any attention from the scene or its characters. Since Spider-Man Homecoming was the superhero's first solo movie in the MCU, it needed links to the rest of the universe. The way it connected Captain America Civil War to the Shocker was pretty impressive. Next up, will Marvel use the Shocker again? As Marvel fans, we all want to know if we'll get to see the Shocker again on our screens. Shocker, just like Toomes, was arrested at the end of Spider-Man Homecoming. This leaves many doors open for his return if the universe ever needs him. However, Spider-Man Homecoming left a loose end with Mark Gargan. Spider-Man No Way Home took the movie in a very different direction, so it's highly unlikely that any of the older villains will come back anytime soon. Of course, it's not entirely impossible, and the Shocker, Scorpion, and maybe even Vulture might return to fight Spider-Man again. Let's wait and see if the multiverse will unleash more chaos. We can only wait and hope for the best. Moving on, let's talk about all the ways MCU proved that Iron Man was right in Captain America Civil War. The initial conflict between Steve Rogers and Tony Stark in Captain America Civil War began when the MCU introduced the Scovian Records. These were legal documents imposed by the United Nations that stated all enhanced beings must be registered. Captain America was completely against it, while Iron Man debated that without rules, they were no different than the bad guys. Their argument got worse, to the point that the Avengers members had to choose sides and fight against fellow members. Tony Stark and Steve Rogers' different stances on the Scovian Records have been a hot topic of debate for several years in the Infinity Saga. However, Marvel has proven several times that Stark was the one who is right. Let's talk about who and how. Not to mention, we have Infinity Wars and Endgame proving that Iron Man's fears were right. After Iron Man almost died in the Avengers, he developed a fear of another extraterrestrial threat coming his way, following the death of Loki in the Battle of New York. We all remember that one. Adding on to that, he expressed the same fear several times in Iron Man 3 in Avengers Age of Ultron, but no one paid any attention to what he had to say. Despite all this, Tony Stark prepared and made sure the Earth was ready to to fight back when the unnamed threat finally came. The fear was finally realized in Infinity Wars with the arrival of Thanos. This was clearly one of the main reasons why Iron Man supported the Sokovian records in Captain America Civil War. He wanted the Avengers to keep preparing for any threat that came their way. Even though he wasn't fully on board with giving the UN all control, he knew signing the Sokovian records was the best way to keep the team together. He knew it would keep the Avengers as one functioning unit. This was even mentioned in Iron Man's outburst in Avengers Endgame. He recalled how Captain America was selfish and prioritized his own personal liberty over the greater good. If the Avengers negotiated with the Sokovian records, at the very least, they would have been prepared to fight Thanos in Infinity War. They would have had to go to great lengths in Avengers Endgame to reverse the snap, costing the lives of both Captain America and Iron Man. Next up, the Sokovian records put Phase 4 heroes in jeopardy. Let's be honest, there was no time to deal with the aftermath of Captain America Civil War due to the progression of the Infinity Saga story. However, the Sokovian records were definitely executed as most of the Avengers and Cap's team were imprisoned, while the others went underground and functioned as the secret Avengers for 2 years. When the threat of Thanos came, the Sokovian records were suspended, and all the heroes were released to put the threat to rest. And then, as we all know, the snap happened, and half of the universe disappeared, including some of our favorite superheroes. Of course, the UN now had bigger problems to deal with than hunting down members of the Avengers that didn't sign the records. Now that Infinity Saga has been wrapped up, MCU Phase 4 has proved that the Sokovian records are back in effect via the shows Ms. Marvel and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Sam Wilson adhered to the government's regulations and worked with them for a living. On the other hand, the Department of Damage Control hunted down Ms. Marvel for being a powerful being who hadn't even declared herself. Implementation of the Sokovian records would have been clear if the Avengers followed Iron Man. The parameters of the documents are murky, which allows any governing body to take advantage. This happens in Ms. Marvel, where unacceptable means were used to hunt down the young superhero. Moving on, not resolving the Sokovian records makes reassembling the Avengers really hard. All the remaining MCU heroes aren't aware of their specific rights to operate and are at a disadvantage. This is because the Avengers and the United Nations both never really discussed the Sokovian records properly. This is why it would be really difficult to reassemble the Avengers in the Multiverse Saga. In the Infinity Saga, Iron Man functioned as the liaison and handled all the official matters of the Avengers. If they agreed on his plan to sign the Sokovian records, he would have been part of the process and would have negotiated things in their favor. It's safe to say that Iron Man would have successfully lobbied for everything that's best for Earth's mightiest heroes because of his traits and personal experience. Now that he's gone, there's no head figure to manage the affairs of the Avengers. It's easy for any governing body to bully the Avengers into doing whatever they want and keep them scattered, since there's no proper spearhead. In the end, what makes Iron Man right in Captain America Civil War is that he always knew what to do. It all boils down to the idea that Tony Stark had a plan. Stark didn't approach the Sokovian records as an end-all be-all matter. Stark always wanted what was best for his team. He looked at all the possible outcomes of the UN's imposition on the matter and figured out the best way to move further while securing the future of the Avengers. Now that he's gone, not going through with his plan to address the Sokovian records leaves behind many problems for those left behind. Well, that's a wrap on today's video. Would you like to see Shocker fight Spider-Man on your screens again? Are you finally Team Iron Man now that you know he was right? Let us know in the comments. And
Do give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell for similar videos.
we'll see you in our next video. Bye!